Hello everyone. This video is about Module 2, the accounting cycle and basic financial statements. So there's two sections really to this module. One is about how the transactions are actually recorded, and then how to examine the financial statements and figure out what they mean. So the objective here is to name and describe the various steps in accounting, to explain debits and credits and journal entries and different types of transactions, and you get a lot of that from the online textbook. And then, of course, you have to analyze and interpret the financial statements. What on earth does it actually mean? What's it telling you? You have to look at the statement of income and retained earnings, and then describe in general terms the taxation rules for your cooperative district. So maybe you're not taxable, and some jurisdictions there's different tax rates for co-ops and credit unions, and just have a general high-level understanding of how dividends are treated from a taxation perspective. Again, every country has its own rules on that. So most of the information regarding how the financial information is compiled and entered into the accounting system is actually covered in the textbook. So as I mentioned in the previous video, the textbook is US based, so I've included some additional examples. And the focus of the book is really to enhance your understanding of how the records are generated. Sometimes you look at the financial statements, but it's nice to know how all that information is actually compiled. And of course, you need to know how patronage dividends are treated, and then again, the taxation. But we're not going in depth into taxation. There is no calculations of taxation in this course, you'll be pleased to know. So the basic steps in the accounting cycle. So it starts off with an economic event and a transaction that impacts the financial health of the entity. So you could be making a sale of goods or services, and then you have to put a monetary value on this transaction. Then you record it. So in the case of a sale, if it's for cash, you would debit cash, or if it's on account, it would be accounts receivable, and the credit would be to revenue. So that's just a quick little example of every transaction has to have certain accounts debited and credited, and they all have to add up. They have to balance. And then, of course, at the end of the accounting period, at the end of the month, you would summarize all of these transactions, and then you get your financial reports. So the lecture notes provide examples of financial statements of cooperatives in Canada, the US, and the UK. And also I've picked examples that use various types of accounting standards. So what I've done is I've included Land O'Lakes, and they're using, they're US, of course, and they're using generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP. I'm using Federated Co-op in Canada, and they're using International Financial Reporting Standards. And then finally, in the UK, I'm using the Industry Association Cooperatives UK, and they're using the Private Enterprise Standards that have been established for UK organizations. So you'll see the comparative analysis that I've done here in the examples in the lecture notes. So in addition to understanding what the financial statements mean in terms of the value of a company's assets and its liabilities, its equity, revenue, expenses, it's also important to consider the usefulness. So who uses the financial statements? Who explains the results to users? How are they distributed? And is there any responsibility to provide financial education to the people who are actually using the financial statements? And that's a bit of an issue for co-ops, because in organizations that are publicly listed on stock exchanges, the analysis are done by paid analysts for various investment firms. However, analysts are not analyzing financial statements for cooperatives. So it's up to the individuals who have a vested interest to understand what the statements are telling them about the financial health of the organization. So the assignment here, our Living Lab, what you're required to do here is discuss the role of financial statements in your co-op, or it can be another cooperative of your choosing. So identify how the statements are distributed to employees and members, whether or not you believe these statements are beneficial in demonstrating accountability to members, the role of management in educating users, because most of the users of co-op financial statements are not experts in the field of finance, so what role should management play in providing some education? And discuss whether you agree or disagree that members of employees are not interested in the financial detail. A lot of people will say there isn't any interest there, but the flip side of that argument may be if it was explained to them in more detail in a manner that they could easily understand, maybe they would be interested. And finally, I would like you to address what changes you'd recommend to improve your cooperative's financial reporting to its members and employees, and of course why you're making those recommendations. So that concludes the video for Module 2.